Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. We are talking today about career planning, which is a topic that we've touched on a number of times in the past and haven't gone back to for a little while. And this is something that Pam has an incredible resource that she has available for people. So we're going to talk through a little bit about what career planning is and isn't, why it can feel so tricky. And then Pam's going to talk through the approach that she advocates, and we'll also share a link so that you can delve deeper with the resource that she has created. So Pam, career planning is one of those things, isn't it? Whenever we've talked about it, I feel like you were a master of this during your own career. You did a lot of career planning. And when we talked about it, I was like, yeah, I was absolutely terrible at this. And I feel I'm definitely more typical in that camp, in that a lot of people almost don't know where to start, so they don't. So what is the problem? Why is career planning, why does it feel so challenging for people?
I think the biggest challenge for people is that they think they've got a career plan, and most of the time it's in their head or it's on a piece of paper that's attached to an appraisal or something along those lines. And what happens is they keep it in their head and they think they're working towards it. But what they don't do is really think about what is involved or what is required in order to achieve those things. And sometimes they can miss lots of opportunities. So, for example, some people will have in their career plan things like, I want to progress or I want more responsibility in something, which isn't necessarily a plan. It's more of a feeling of that's I'd love to achieve that. But in reality, what do you need to do and what does that look like? So I think even people that do some formal career planning can find that it just becomes a tick box exercise that gets filed away. And I think that was the thought process behind the career plan on a page, was that it's on one page, it's accessible, it's easy to go back to, and it can evolve. And when you've got something like that, you can look at it on a weekly basis. It's not as easy to drift or forget about it if it's just one page and it's really easy to put together.
I really relate to that. So my career plan effectively was get your head down, work really hard, progress. That was essentially the career plan that I had in my head. It was no specific kind of role even necessarily, because where I was reporting into a CEO, so I didn't necessarily think about where I might go or where I might be stretched or what might I need to demonstrate or get involved in order to do that. It was very much okay, I just want to keep growing, so let's get my head down and go. So what do you think stops people from taking that next step? So if they are ambitious and they know, I'm just thinking of a conversation I had this week with somebody who's like, yeah, I want to be able to get to that next level. What is it that stops somebody from then starting to put something more concrete in place, do you think?
I think a lot of the time with people, they think creating a career plan is this big formal activity that's going to take ages, that you need to put loads of thought into, that you need to give it loads of hours of attention. And usually, when you're in your job and you're quite ambitious, the job takes priority. So, generally, people are thinking, when I get to this point, then I'll think about the career plan. Or another thing that people generally start to think is, I need more experience. That is an absolute classic one. Before I can move to the next stage, before I can think about the next role or taking the promotion, I need to get more experience. But this is where people miss out. And this is also where people can fast track, because once you break it down and you identify what it is that you actually need to do in order to make those moves, then you can look for the opportunities and you can take the action. I think that the perception of a career plan as this big formal activity that's going to take ages really puts people off.
And just thinking about the conversation I had this week. So my client had a conversation with their boss, and their boss had gone to manage your expectations. Yeah, to get to that level, next level, you're talking probably several years. But I also think there's an aspect that people find it quite hard to understand the specifics of what might actually help them, almost like what would I even put in a career plan? Because in that example, his boss had said to him, expect, yeah, great that you have that ambition, expect it to take some time. So my question was, okay, so did that conversation involve, do you now know what steps or what aspects would allow you to demonstrate that, whether that's in a year, 3 years, 5 years? And there wasn't that clarity. It's almost then, what would I even put, even if it was a big formal document, what would I even put in it? And I think finding out what you need to consider or what some of the things might be is its own challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also what puts people off, because if they think it's going to take me ages, or actually, I think one of the classic things is I don't know where to start, or I don't know what it should look like. So you just keep putting it off. And I think the key place to start with any career plan is thinking about where you are now. What has got you to this point, and how are you feeling about where you are now? Because I think that tells us a lot about whether we're ready to take the next steps, whether we're ready to start thinking about the next steps. And regardless of being ready or not, if you work through the career plan on a page, you can put down some real basic information, and you can just go back and repopulate that. Because what you can guarantee, as soon as you set your brain down that path of thinking about the different elements that you need to think and plan for, those things will start popping in. And I always say, do it on a Google Doc, because then you can access it on your phone. You can literally be updating it on the train or when you're out and about when you think of these things. And that makes it easier. And I suppose the key thing is just getting it started, getting yourself on that track of thinking, where am I? Where do I want to be? What are the gaps? And thinking of ways that you can then bridge those gaps, get some extra training, get some exposure to different things. But unless you pinpoint what those things are, or you start to think about what they could look like, you will definitely miss opportunities to do those things.
And we did the episodes at the start of the year on reflect first and then connect and commit to what you want next. So those episodes would be a great resource for people that are struggling with that aspect of almost, what do I even want? And I like that point around starting with reflection and starting with looking back over, where are you now? What's brought you to here? Because I think that's not talked about enough when it comes to career planning. People, I think, have the impression that you start with where you are and have to think about the future. And it's that horrific interview question, where do you want to be in 5 years? It's just, I remember that hopefully is asked less often now. But I just remember that is a ridiculous question. How would I possibly answer it? And in an interview situation, it's horrible because you're trying to gauge what do they want to hear. So I think there's the second guessing piece, but actually even just to ask yourself that, so often people don't have an answer to that. And it can become clearer by starting with looking back, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you look back and you see where you've come and what's got you to where you are here, the career math exercise is brilliant for doing that as well. Because when you look at where you've been, you can almost track through. And I do this when I'm writing CVs with people as well. It's, tell me your story. Tell me where you think you made the most impact in each role. Tell me what the challenges were in that role. How did you overcome them? What was good about this? What made you want to move on? Some of these things you don't always put into the CV, but it's good to understand somebody's journey and then help them to pull out some of those key bits that they might just think part of the job, but in actual fact, they're the things that are going to differentiate them from the other candidates. So I think if you can do that exercise and go through it, it's so useful, because things will come up and you'll go, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved that job, or I absolutely hated that job for these reasons. And then you can lean into those feelings and emotions and go, but why? And just keep asking yourself why, like, why was it so good? And then it could be that that was really good. Maybe I want to do more of that. Because I think another reason for having a career plan is sometimes you can get really lost in your career and you can start thinking, is this it? Is this all I'm destined for? Is this all that it's meant to be? But if you've got that plan, you can keep going back to the plan, because even if you're doing a role and it's purely to get experience because you need that experience to take the next step, if at any point you start thinking, what am I doing? I can't even get out of bed for this job. I hate it. We'll go back to the plan, because why am I doing this? I only need to do it for another 6 or 7 months. And then I've got the experience and the exposure that I need to move on to something else, or to start thinking about putting the job search back in action. So there's that side of it as well. It almost becomes like a compass for your career. You keep going back to it and checking in with yourself. And if things aren't feeling right, it's a great way to go back. But equally, if things are going really well, you can go back and be like, what can I do more of? How can I amplify this? How can I use this to my advantage? And you can have that dialogue with yourself from a real strong foundation, rather than just doing it all in your head and just being like, know what I'm doing. It's in my head, and thought it through, and you've never committed it to paper. So I guarantee that if you've got a great career plan in your head, there's definitely opportunities that you've missed, or ways that you could have fast tracked your career, or could have got pay rises sooner if you'd have put it or committed it to paper and planned it out just a little bit better.
There's so many great points in there. My head's going in several different directions at once. But I think the one that I want to pick out is that sense of energy that can come from noticing what has been good in your career. Where have you had impact? And also, it can be the recognition that when you haven't had a great time in a job, what was it about that? Was it the actual work? Because it often isn't. It's often, it was a very political environment, or I had a boss who was just a nightmare to work with, or the company was just really struggling and we were cost constrained, when I work better in environments where we're growing fast and building the track as we go. So I think that piece of reflecting back and seeing, and I've definitely noticed that with clients when we've been talking about their career and thinking about what they might want next, that sense of reminding and refreshing, where have I drawn energy from in the past? What gives me energy? What do I want more of? People don't always think about that when they're thinking about, I want progression, I want a next step. And then the second point I think I would draw out is also that a career plan isn't just for, I want a promotion, I want to pay rise. It can also be, my next step could be a move in a different direction. And I had a client once where initially our conversations were around his leadership and his aspiration to progress to MD. And by the end of our time working together, what he recognized was, I'm always going to have to dance to someone else's tune if I do that. Whereas what really lit him up was the opportunity to do things his own way, be autonomous, just really make those decisions. And what he ended up doing was leaving and starting his own venture. So I think sometimes when you start to think about these things, surprising turns can come about that wouldn't have if you didn't do that reflection piece and you didn't think about, what are the things I really love, but also what are the frustrations, the constraints, the things that I want less of. So if people are now convinced and, okay, yeah, maybe I haven't done it, maybe it would be helpful, even if it feels hard, how do you make it easier for people? Talk us through this really simple process that you've created that people can use.
Yeah, so it super simple. So obviously you can just download it and access it, and for each element of it, there's some information and a worksheet. So you can literally just open it up and complete the worksheet. I usually do it all in Google Docs, so it's transferable for people. Again, makes it easier. And then once you've done the work in each module, then you can transfer all of that onto your career plan on a page, and it basically populates that. And what it does is it just allows you to do that thinking separately, and allows you to do it in small chunks. So probably in total, I don't know, maybe you'd need an hour in total to go and start doing the initial thinking. And then once you've done that and you've got yourself into that track of this is what I need to be thinking about, then you can add to it as you go. So it's just keeping it super simple, because if you're working full time, the last thing you need is a whole afternoon spent on a career plan, or one of the weekend days spent on a career plan. If you do little bits of it over a week, you could do 10, 15 minutes a day, that all of the info, all of the thinking. You can do the module, do the thinking, populate your career plan on a page, and then by the end of the week, you'll have your career plan on a page. Alternatively, you can just do it all in an hour if you've got an hour. And it just means that you've got something to start with. It doesn't mean that this is your entire career plan and you're ready to go and you're going to have this all singing, all dancing career plan at the end of it. Because I guarantee whatever thinking that you do at the start of this process, in 1 month, your thinking will be different. In 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, your thinking will have changed and it will evolve. And it will evolve in a really positive way, because once you start thinking about it, you can't stop thinking about it, and it will keep coming up when you're doing things, and you'll spot more opportunities, and you'll start thinking of different ways to progress your career. And like what you said, it's not always about promotion, is it? Because within my career plan, there was a few sideways moves for me to gain exposure and experience in different areas, which then allowed me to go and get a bigger role 18 months down the line. So it doesn't always have to be that straight path to the top. It can be looking at, where would I like to be? What exposure do I need to have? What kinds of roles could I get that from? And it could be a case of that. And there's a lot of stuff that you can actually do within your current role, shadowing within your organization, like comments within your organization, like all of this stuff. Once you start thinking it through, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that just by plotting it out, I can actually get to that point sooner, or I can actually get to that point full stop. Because I think sometimes we think this is not quite right for us, but we don't know how we can change it. And I feel like the clients that I've worked with in creating a career plan on a page, the light bulb moments are like amazing. And there's one example of somebody that came to me in a sales role, senior sales person. And she was like, I absolutely hate sales, don't want to do sales anymore. And she was like, but I don't know what else I can do because I've done it for 20 odd years. So we explored all of the things that she got energy from. We looked at where she's been, the things that she enjoyed in the role. And she thought that she might like to try being a coach. So she went away and she explored all of that. And she came back to me and she said, coaching is not going to be for me. But what I've realized is there are other roles that use these skills and use these things that aren't direct sales roles. And that is exactly then what she did. She created the plan to go and get a role, and she ended up doing a partnerships role, which has obviously still got a sales element to it, but not the high powered sales that she was used to. And she said she's never been happier. And she said, if we hadn't have gone through that plan, if I hadn't have thought it out, if I hadn't have explored those other things, she said, I would have just had in my head, I think I want to be a coach. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know where to start with it. And she said, I would have been beating myself up thinking, I'm just doing these jobs that I don't enjoy and I should be a coach. So she was able to go through that whole process. And it took a couple of months to go through that process, but she came out of it the other side with so much energy. And it was just lovely to see that she'd explored it and then achieved what she actually didn't realize at the start that she wanted, but something that was going to actually fulfill her and make her happy moving forward.
Love that story. So what does the completed career plan on a page look like? When people have done this process, what are they then going to be working with? What are the sections, or how's it laid out? What are they going to have that they can hold and keep going back to?
So what is on the page is a lot around like where you want to get to. So thinking about the direction, also your strengths, because as you evolve through this process, you're going to develop new strengths. You're going to work on things that will then become strengths. So you can then update those. And also thinking about skills that you need to develop and experiences that you need to gain will accelerate your growth. So you may not always know what they are at first, but you can, when you start thinking about them, then you can add them on, and any immediate actions that you need to take. So the small steps that you can take to move you forward each day, each week, each month. And then it's about committing to going back to that document and reviewing it on, some people review it on a weekly basis, some will do it fortnightly, monthly, quarterly, whatever's going to work for you. My recommendation is to revisit it at least once a month, even for just 10 minutes, and just be like, what did I achieve this month? Am I working towards these goals? And are these goals still right for me? Does this still fit? And based on what I've been working on, what have I learned? And what are the next steps for next month? So you're just constantly reevaluating what you've got on there as well.
It's such a simple process, but I can totally see why and how it's been so powerful for you working with your clients. And obviously, if people are working with you one-to-one, then there's a real structure around how you revisit it and working together on it. But just for people to do and then to diarize, like you say, 15 minutes with a couple once a month to go back to it, I think people will find there is extraordinarily powerful to start to do this if they're not. And it's almost that, just do it and have an experiment with it, and don't feel like you're necessarily tied. I think that was one of my areas of resistance to career planning, was feeling like I don't want to be pigeonholed, I don't want to be tied into something. But I then threw the baby out with the bathwater, because what I didn't do was think about, what do I want more of? What opportunities might I want to explore? And had I have done that, then I think things could have been quite different in how my career panned out. So we're going to put the link into the show notes so that people can go and download this. It's completely free as a resource. You can download it. You can work your way through it. We would love to hear what comes up for you as you work your way through it, and what surprises come up. Because I think both of us, when we've worked with clients in the past, there's always, like I say, with that client that I described, oh, I think I want this thing. And then actually, as I start to work towards that, no, maybe I don't, maybe this is what I want. So please do keep us posted with what comes up for you as you complete that. And as ever, if there are episodes or topics that we have not covered recently that will be helpful for you, then please do drop us a message and let us know. And do share this with somebody. I think there's also real power in accountability. So maybe share this with somebody that you are close to, where the two of you could perhaps hold each other accountable and undertake this exercise together and have discussion, because there's such value in the discussions in what comes out. As ever, thank you for listening, and we will be back next time with another episode.